to the Be the Best You podcast. The sole purpose of this podcast is to teach, inspire, and motivate everyone to be the best versions of themselves. Welcome to another episode of the Be the Best You podcast. I'm your host, Larry Dawson, and thanks again for tuning in. Make sure if you're watching or listening today, you take the time to like, share, subscribe. Make sure you comment, man, and let us know how much you enjoy this. Today I got a really awesome guest on. I'm very happy and proud to have this man on. I know this man personally. I've worked with this man. I've become friends with this man, Mr. Kenyon Harris. He is co-owner of the Nax Realty Group, but he also has his hands in several other things. So I'm going to let you break it down. Tell me everything about yourself and what you have going on, man.
And thanks for having me, man. I know we've been talking about this for a while,
yeah.
So I definitely appreciate you having me on. My name is Kenyon Harris. I'm owner of Poplar Square Realty. I'm part of the Nax Group, and we're affiliated with Keller Williams. And then my wife and I, we own a for-profit called In Sync Couples, where we do couples retreats, try to help people just support strong marriages. I mean, that's kind of one of the things that we're into. She also owns a nonprofit called the Facts Initiative, where she focuses on therapeutic services for children and families. Myself also have another podcast called The King's Table. So I got my hands in a little bit of everything, but I'm really interested in what you're doing. We met a while back when you were doing a wellness event.
Yeah.
And so we reached out and said we wanted to go ahead and sponsor. Yeah. I remember that day you came straight up to the office, and we just connected. We just hit it off right off the bat, man. So yeah, I'm glad we connected, man. I'm glad to be here with you, and let's get to it.
So one thing that stood out to me from the first time I met you to now is, like you said, we did hit it off, but you're a former military man.
Yeah.
So it didn't surprise me at all that we hit it off. Most of all of the men from my family were military men, except for me, because unfortunately I got locked up. And I got sent away, so I didn't get that opportunity. I took a different route. But, as a man, you can respect another man. And my wife, we talked about this when we first got together and stuff, her telling me, you're a different type of man, like it's different being around you than in a lot of other men. Yeah. And she said, it's weird how when we go places, people treat you different, people gravitate towards you. And one thing I always told her was that real men, like alpha men, solid men, good men, they kind of recognize each other. There's kind of a mutual respect between each other, and you kind of know that. And when they're not as well. So so things are a little different with that. No, man, but it's been my privilege and honor to get to know you as a person. And you have so many cool things going on. That's why I wanted to bring you on and talk to you about. I wanted to talk to you about not only the state of real estate in America right now, because what we saw was a massive spike up.
That's right.
And then a massive spike down. So now everyone's like, whoa, what's going on? So I have a couple questions for you today. I want you to break that down to the average person that doesn't quite understand. They're not as knowledgeable on it as you, and you can give them some facts versus fiction on that. Yeah. Also, man, I'm super intrigued about the couples retreat that you and your wife have going on. We live in a day and time now where it's encouraged to cheat. We have a show in Charlotte called Side Chicks of Charlotte. Where when all you see on social media is explicit stuff, it's controversy after controversy about cheating and divorce, and more than half of marriages end in divorce these days. So when you find out that there's really good couples out there and really solid people out there that have the same virtues and mindset and respect as you, I'm intrigued by that. Because be the best you. And I talk about this all the time, being a better version of yourself in every single walk of life. And you can't just fall in love one day and be like, okay, well, I fell in love. The rest of my life's going to be great with that person. that's not reality.
It's not a Disney movie.
Yeah. So it takes work. But, and I've said that to people before, and this is how they come back at me when I say that. Well, if it's real love and a great relationship, it shouldn't take work. What do you mean? To have a great business, you have to put in work, right?
Work.
To get a degree, you have to put in work, right?
That's right.
To go buy a new house or a new car, you got to put in work, right?
Amen.
Anything great in this life that you want to have long term and to be successful, you have to put in work.
Right.
And then I want to talk to you a little bit about your military experience and some of those things.
Yeah, definitely.
So, all right, man, got some questions here for you. Let's see what the first question is.
All right.
You were a realtor before things went crazy during COVID. Then, during COVID, the market blew up and went insane.
Yeah.
Then the Fed started raising the interest rates, which created this massive downturn. What advice would you give to home buyers or sellers in the current market?
You know, that's a good question. So, number one, you're right. Like, I've been doing real estate long before COVID. And then when COVID hit, the first thing we saw is like everything shut down. You know, so for real estate, that meant people started working from home. So the value of having a house just went through the roof. And so that's part of why our prices went up, right? And so now coming out of COVID, we're kind of going back to normal, so to speak. So for a buyer, if you're looking for a house now, you do have to understand the market that you're operating in, right? So here in the Charlotte market, we're still in the seller's market, just meaning that there's more buyers than there are available sellers. There's less inventory for buyers to go after. So if you're looking to buy a house right now, understand that you're in a competition. It's not as crazy as it was during COVID, where you basically had to make an offer on a house. Like, you guys remember, we were out looking for houses.
Yeah.
And sometimes you had to make an offer. You had to pay a seller to even go in and look at the house.
I made this. You remember the night I called you about this house?
Yeah.
We made an offer on this house sight unseen.
Before you even saw it.
Yeah.
And you got to think about it. How crazy is that? The largest investment that most people will ever make, they were forced to buy it before they saw it.
Yeah. That's what happens when you get outbid. Well, not necessarily outbid, but during that time it was weird because a house might be for like $460.
Yeah.
You think, all right, well, I'll give you $460. I give you $465.
Yeah.
But you're not realizing that all of a sudden people are putting $5 and $525 offers, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then closing for those prices,
Yeah.
which is unprecedented. So now that we're in a little bit of a more normal market, if you're a home buyer right now, what you need to do is have your ducks in a row, right? Make sure you have a pre-approval letter. There's a difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. Pre-approval means you talk to a lender, you shared your financial documents, your W-2 statements, your pay stubs and everything, your credit score. They know everything about you from a financial perspective to say, yes, this person is approved for X amount of dollars to buy whatever house with whatever type of loan, right? So get that done up front. The second thing you want to do is when you enter the market, understand you're still in a competition. So if you walk into a house, you see it, you like it, you love it. If you want to make an offer that will at least get the seller to engage in a negotiation with you. Like, a lot of buyers think this is 2008, they hear the recession going around, they think we're in a market crash. Our market has not crashed, and it will not crash for a whole bunch of other reasons. But long story short, when you go in, make an offer that a seller may accept, or at least they may engage you and say, well, you know what, if you change a couple things, we can do a deal, right? And then also look for deals. You know, there's nothing wrong with looking around, just kind of waiting to see if a house is sitting on the market for a little while, right? Because in Charlotte, when our market just kind of dipped a couple months ago, the inventory went up to 2.7 months, which just basically means if nobody else put a house on the market, within 2.7 months, everything would sell. That's still really, really low, right? But there was a little bit more wiggle room for buyers now.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to sell a house in this market, understand the value of your house. Back during COVID, you could just make up an imaginary number, put the house on.
And it worked.
It worked. And somebody's going to buy your house for $20,000 more than what you got it listed for, and they're going to close.
Yeah.
And they're not going to do an appraisal, not going to do inspections. That's over now. Now you have to price that house right, because when you put it on the market, if it's not priced right, it's not going to sell.
Yeah.
So make sure you got it priced right. Make sure you're working with a professional who can help you go through that process. And then also be honest with yourself. If I'm going to sell a house today, knowing that barely anybody else is selling houses, have a plan as to where you're going to go and understand, why am I selling this house now? Because a lot of sellers, I'll be honest with you, I've talked to more people in the last 6 months and told them just wait on selling a house, as opposed to just saying, yeah, let's go ahead and put it on the market, because they don't have an idea where they're going. You know?
So I've went through 6 purchases of homes or properties. You know, I invest in real estate over the course of the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed is that because the interest rates have went high, so I'm going to spit some numbers out for you guys really quickly. If you are in the market for a home that costs $750,000, if you would have caught the interest rate maybe 12 to 18 months ago and you'd have caught 3% versus now it's 6%, let me explain why houses are sitting on the market a little bit longer. The difference in your monthly payment per month, going from a 3% rate to a 6% rate, is $1,076 per month more you will pay. So therefore, because the interest rate has been raised, it has limited the buyers on properties.
Right.
So if you had a $750,000 home that in this neighborhood or this area, 100 people could have qualified for it based on what their monthly payment would have been at 2.5 or 3. Now at 5.5 or 6, that number of 100 that qualified might have dropped to about 20.
Yeah.
So now you don't have the massive fight to get, this property. Therefore, you can't put imaginary numbers on properties like you said. And what I've also noticed is where people had their properties jacked up to unrealistic expectations. Like I looked at a house for an investment on the lake recently, and it was valued at 545. No, I'm sorry, 575, and they had it at 550. But at one point, I could see on the listing where they had it at 625, then dropped it to 6, then dropped it to 675, like so forth and so on. They dropped it down; it was all the way down to 550, but the actual value of it was 575. So they actually had dropped it under what the value is, based on a lot of that having to do with the interest rates. So for people to actually understand how the interest rate works, could you break that down a little bit for them?
Yeah. So interest rates, most mortgage lenders are going to base your interest rate off of your credit score, right? Your income and your debt, right? So how much debt are you carrying every month? Because ultimately they want to be able to make the house payment fit within your just gross net and your gross income. Mm-hmm. It's not even the net, right? Which is a benefit to most buyers. Yep. The thing is, once they calculate your interest rate, you may be at like 5%. But the thing most people don't realize about interest rates is that they can change 4 to 6 times per day. So that's why you hear the term rate lock a lot, where a lender will say, you know what, we got you in at a rate at 5.5%. If you want to go ahead and lock the rate, we can do that for 30 days, 45 days, whatever the case might be. The thing is with that rate lock is it expires. Mm-hmm. So if you don't go under contract and close within that time frame, you could end up with a higher rate. You see what I mean? And so when our rates started to look like they were going to creep up like they have been doing, what a lot of companies were doing is they would say to a buyer, go ahead and lock the rate. Mm-hmm. Even though they were kind of doing a yo-yo. And some buyers would be like, well, what if I lock it and it goes lower? It's like, yeah, it could go lower, but it could go higher too.
It was going higher all year.
Yeah, and it was creeping up.
Yeah.
So you go ahead and lock it in, get that rate, and the term that I use all the time, the phrase I tell people, is you marry the house, but you date the rate. So you go in there today, your interest rate is, let's say, 5.75%. And you know that fits in your budget, but it's a little bit higher than you want to pay. If that's the house you want, and you can see yourself living there, and you can see that being a place that you stay for 10 years, right? Go ahead, get that house, pay that higher rate, right? 12 months later, refinance it. Get down into a lower rate. You're going to save money automatically. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? And it's a difficult thing for people to wrap their heads around. You want to pay more money up front, but sometimes you do have to pay a little bit more, right? Like if you want to lose weight, like you're in fitness, right? You want to lose weight, you might have to do an extra set. Yeah. You might have to skip the cupcakes. You know what I'm saying? You have to sacrifice. You got to sacrifice. Yeah. And owning a home, honestly, let's be real here. Owning a house is going to become a luxury. You see, because you got companies out there, I won't call them by name, but they're on record saying that they would love to rent the American dream to people, to Americans. That's why they come by all the houses. They want to make us all renters, right? So why not own and take control of that part of your finances to build generational wealth?
I listen to Grant Cardone a lot. He's a big real estate guy, and one of the things I was listening to him say the other day is that the entire loan process and the entire American Dream name was made up by the bank.
It was.
Because how are they going to sell you on this unless they market it to you, right? So it was created by the banks because there's got to be a reason that they're loaning you money, right? So that's one of the main reasons they're going to loan you money. But there's also these giant corporations that are smart. They're just like you said. They're coming around and buying these houses up and like, well, these people, they really can't afford these down payments.
Right.
They can't afford these interest rates. Yeah. They can't afford the long-term commitment. But what they can afford is to pay this monthly rent.
That's right.
So I was listening to him the other day, and he was basically saying these companies are turning the American dream and from owning a home to now renting a home. Crazy, right?
And it's cheaper to own a house. But
Yeah.
most of the time, you're going to pay less in a mortgage than you would in rent.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, but you're talking about thinking about things from a very solid mentality.
Yeah.
Right? So most people don't think about what they're going to do next month.
Right.
Let alone year after year after year after year, so they're not looking at the big picture of things. And unfortunately, that's why a lot of people find themselves in situations where they're having to rent constantly.
Yeah. Owning a house is a huge deal. I mean, you look at all these millionaires and billionaires, and if you survey them, it's close to 100% of these guys, they own a significant portion of real estate. And there's a reason for that, because it's one of the only assets that appreciates in value pretty much all the time. And if you think about this is a stat I was talking to a lender about. It blew my mind. It says that after every recession and like recession in the housing market that we've had, every time we generate more millionaires than we ever had.
That's because the smarter people will buy low.
There you
And then because everything, so here's the thing about our economy. It constantly is going to go down and it's constantly going to go up.
Yep.
Everything that goes down must come up and everything that goes up must come down. So a lot of the people, like Grant Cardone, he will tell you he became who he is during the 2008 downturn.
Yeah.
So a lot of people panic when things go down. They sell off cheap.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy because you're locking in a loss, and then these people that want to be wealthy, they come and snatch it for 50 cents on the dollar.
That's right.
And then when things go up, not only is it back worth $1, there's more added onto it. So now it's worth $1.25.
Yeah.
So what they paid 50 cents for is now worth $1.25, and that's where your new millionaires come from.
That's right.
Capitalizing off of other people's, mistakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, you guys be smart out there. Don't panic when things go down because everything will come back up and eventually it'll go back down again.
Yeah.
That's the cycle of life.
Yeah.
So how do you keep a positive attitude and a strong business base during tough times?
That's a good question too. Excuse me. So first thing for me, honestly, is I keep the faith, right? So I'm the type of person that, I have a higher power I believe in. I believe in create, that we're created, and I believe in grace and all of that stuff, right? So for me, I need that to center and ground me, right? And it also takes the pressure off of me from thinking that I have to control everything, right? Because I didn't create the earth, so it ain't my job to spin it. You see what I'm saying? And that takes a lot of pressure off of me to where I can focus on what I have to do every day. So that's one thing that I do. The second thing that I do is, honestly, I treat real estate like playing baseball. So think about it like this. The most legendary hitters in the history of baseball, they're all what we call a 300 hitter, right? Just meaning that 30% of the time, they're going to make contact with the ball and they're going to get on base, right? Which means they have to fail 70% of the time to be considered great. So when I hit the phones in the morning, because I do a lot of cold calling.
Yeah.
I hit the phone in the morning, I may call 400 people that day. But my goal at the end of the day is just 2 appointments a week. So I only need to, if I'm making that, 400 or 500 calls a day, I may make 20 contacts that day, right? Within a week, if I make 20 contacts a day, that's 100 contacts a week. And I still only need 2 of those people to agree to meet with me, right? And then I average in that half of the people that I even sign are going to not buy or sell. So I'm automatically working with a baseline of a 50% success rate. And then I'm taking from there that some of those people may roll over into the next year. So if you actually looked at my numbers, for me to hit whatever financial goal I set for myself, I only need to be successful 33% of the time. You see what I'm saying? And so I take everything and I've gamed it down into what do I need to focus on every day, which is my daily inputs. I don't even care about the outputs. I can't control the other person. You know what I mean? But I can control my activities. So I get up in the morning, I say my prayers, I write my day out, I plan everything hour by hour. You know, from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. is all planned on the calendar. I know exactly where I'm gonna be, what I'm gonna be doing. I create time in that. My coach got me on this, and he's like, you need to plan for interruptions. You need to plan for the unplanned. I'm like, well, how do you plan for something that? And he's like, put it on your calendar. We call that focus time. Put that on my calendar so that I know if somebody interrupts me at 2 o'clock, I got focus time at 4 o'clock, to where if I'm just catching up on stuff, I can step away to take a phone call, right? So I try to plan everything out to understand where I'm gonna be at, what I'm gonna be doing, and then I try my best to keep a positive outlook, which for me, part of the way I've done that is just try to gamify things to make it kind of a game of numbers for me. You know what I'm saying? I just gotta keep swinging. I just gotta keep stepping up to the plate every day. You know, when I stop stepping up to the plate, then I'll fail.
Man, if you're watching or listening, the amount of knowledge that was just dropped in that one statement was crazy. I'm going to touch on a couple of those because these are things, before we move on, because these are things we talk about a lot. The first thing was that you plan your day out ahead of time by understanding what you're going to do all day long and writing that out. Do you know that the majority of most successful people in the world, that's exactly what they do?
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that struggle in the world, they do the complete opposite.
Right.
Where gave you the idea to do that? How long have you been executing that?
So when I first quit my job, right, to backtrack, I was doing real estate part-time, working full-time, and I was getting fired by my real estate clients, straight up. I mean, because I couldn't serve them.
Yeah.
And it just hit the point to where I'm working an unfulfilling job, making more money than I ever have. I hate it, right? The doctor is prescribing me these freaking pills I don't want to take. And I saw a friend of mine from church and just, walking to the job one day, and she was like, wherever you're going is killing you. You need to stop. And that's not the reason I stopped, but that was kind of confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped. I quit my job. I started doing real estate full time. In the first week I came back to Keller Williams, our team leader of the office was like, hey, we're starting Bold, which is a course that they do there. It's a sales course, and it's called Business Objective, A Life by Design. And the first thing they do is they give you a black journal, right? And it's like your wins for the day and your lessons from the day. And so the first thing they say is like, you need to make a schedule. And I know how to make a schedule. At least I thought I did. And we started doing all these time studies to figure out how you spend your time and this and that. And so I just really leaned into it, because if you don't have a schedule, anybody could say anything at any time or suggest anything to make you just go do something other than your goal, right? So if, let's say for instance, like for me, cold calling, sometimes I don't like calling expired listings because people are upset that their house didn't sell.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that sometimes that's the easiest way for me to get a listing. I gotta lean into it. And if I just look at it like, well, I'm only making that call 2 hours a day from 9 to 11, all right, then it's a little bit easier, right? So that's where I got the journaling thing from.
Interesting. And then the second thing that you touched on that I think is very important is you mentioned having a coach.
Yeah.
Can you break that down a little bit for us?
So you need somebody who you can bounce ideas off of, but also somebody that will say to you, maybe you're going in the wrong direction, right? And my coach, he's not like a hard ass or anything. He's a meek guy, right? His nickname is Jedi, to kind of give you an idea of like the way his brain works. But having a coach for me gives me somebody to say, have you thought about doing it this way, right? And also somebody to look at you and say, well, you're beating yourself up, but actually you're doing pretty good, right? Because the hardest thing for us a lot of times is to give ourselves a compliment.
Yeah.
We always criticize ourselves really bad. I'm the worst offender of that. You know what I'm saying? My wife is a therapist.
Yeah.
So she's always on me about my negative self-talk. But my coach, he's also like, recognize the grace in your life. Recognize the positive things. And understand that you may not be where you want to ultimately end up, but you're going in the right direction. So applaud yourself sometimes.
It's so crazy to me how when you talk about, because I do like coaching with people, when you talk about coaching, probably I would say 60 to 70% of people look at you crazy. Like, I don't need a coach. I don't need nobody every time I do. You might want to take a look at things in your life. So, because the most successful people, the top sports athletes, the top performers, the people that are really reaching the pinnacle of their profession, they use coaches.
That's right.
That's one of the secrets to success. How do you think Tony Robbins and all these guys made it to the level of being in people's ear, coaching them, inspiring them, pushing them to different levels? Because some of us can be self-motivated, but we all, even the self-motivated people, need an extra little kick, an extra little push. It's funny to me that if you separated the economic, if you separate our population by economics, and you took the top 30% and then the bottom 70%, the bottom 70% will be the ones that tell you, you don't need no coach, what do you need a coach for? The top 30% will be the ones that tell you, you would be very smart to invest in a coach.
That's right. Tom Brady has a quarterback's coach.
But did you catch that? The top 30% would tell you, you should invest in a coach.
That's
the
right.
bottom 70% would be like, man, you don't need no. And then the last part of that knowledge that you dropped on us that I want to touch on is you said, as long as you keep stepping up to the plate,
Right.
and as long as you keep trying to get a hit, even if you fly out, strike out, ground out 70% of the time, as long as 30% of the time you're reaching base, you're being successful.
Right.
That's so key because people will quit, fold tent, take their ball and go home as soon as they have a little bit of failure or things don't go their way. And I tell people this all the time, the only time you ever really lose is when you quit.
That's right.
So that mentality, can you touch on that? Because that is so important for so many people to hear.
Well, I mean, for me, that comes from, I think, my upbringing. So I grew up in a blue-collar family. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. My dad, he worked in a steel mill, specifically like this bronze mill where they made all these, bookcase pieces and stuff like that. And so anyway, my dad, I would just watch him, he just worked all the time to make sure food was on the table, right? He always went back to it, no matter whether he was sick, whatever it was, he always went back to work. And for me, what that signifies for me is that there's something to be said for faithfulness in what you do and being committed, which I think is kind of a lost principle nowadays, because I look at our generation of people coming up, and especially the men, right? And a lot of folks are telling us like, yeah, take care of your mental health, take a break, this, that, and the third. And yeah, we got to take care of our mental health. But also there's 7 million men that are not in the workforce. They're not working, they're not doing anything, right? And my question is, how is we as a society, how can we move forward if the men don't work, right? If all these people are out of the workforce. And for me, it's probably because some of them probably just quit. And for me, I just can't quit. I got mouths to feed, and I have a great responsibility, which is to, honestly, to be the breadwinner in my house. And so I keep coming back to it, and that principle just comes from how I was raised, And I heard a sermon a few years ago. My pastor, he was doing like a relationship series, and he was talking specifically to the men, and he's like, there's gonna be days where you and your wife, you guys may not be getting along. The kids may hate you, and you may have to ride around the block for an hour before you walk in the door at the end of the day. But he's like, you got to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You got to be committed. And if it's something that you've committed to, you have to understand that you're going to fail sometimes. The first thing, like I told you, I was failing in real estate.
Our greatest success comes in failure. It teaches our biggest lessons to us.
That's right. I mean, Michael Jordan got cut from his basketball team.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Tom Brady got cut from his high school football team. You just mentioned him.
Yeah. I mean, so we gotta lean into it. Sometimes it sucks, it feels bad, but you have to just come back to it. And so for me, I just say forget it. Like real estate right now, it's fun. It may not be the most lucrative thing for every realtor, but those who keep coming back, you'll make it through.
So, a couple things, man. Really quickly, I want to touch on all the men listening. And even the ladies, because ladies, you're raising men out there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're probably about 4 generations deep in America of men being raised by women.
Yeah.
There is this mentality right now that's out there that it's okay to quit. It's okay to not push yourself. It's participation trophy, be in your feelings. There's some of these things are okay, but this coddling of men and not wanting men to be men and this so-called toxic masculinity and not wanting men to be men, this needs to stop. And if you're watching my video and you're listening to my podcast, you understand very clearly I'm not with any of that. I'm with supporting men, loving men, helping men, growing men, teaching men everything about life, including how to be a man and how to have responsibility, how to take care of your family, how to be a soldier in the world that we live in and not just be blown whichever way the wind is blowing you. So if you're watching this video and you are listening to this video and you're a man out there, I challenge you to step up to the plate and listen to some of the things that this gentleman just said to you about responsibility and being a man, and even when things are tough and things aren't going your way, not folding tent, but to be strong. That's what builds character. That's what builds resolve. And that's when you actually learn your most and you can grow from it and become a much better version of yourself. And ladies, if you're listening out there, God bless you for raising these men and doing most of this stuff by yourself, but don't pamper these boys and don't give these boys excuses. Hold these boys accountable and teach these boys to be men, so when they're let off into the world, we're not letting a bunch of feminine men that can't take care of themselves and are dragging society down. So I just wanted to touch on that and get that out there.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. Because I think in some ways we're kind of creating men. I'm going to just say it the way I feel it. We're creating men that are a lot like women. And eventually, the women have to be honest too. Like, you know, if you're heterosexual, you don't want a feminine man. I mean, let's call it what it is, right? And there's nothing wrong with being sensitive, nothing wrong with being, in touch with your emotions and stuff like that. But there is a point at which you have to steel yourself and move forward. I remember when I was in basic training, like they have this thing where you got to rappel off a 40-foot tower. And the first time I was on that tower, I was looking down. I'm like, man, I'm not afraid of heights, but I'm afraid of the fall. I kept looking down, and I remember Drill Sergeant Gonzalez was standing over me, and he was like, Harris, what you gonna do? And I was like, I guess I'm gonna have to go down, Drill Sergeant. And before I got the end of my statement out, he kicked me in the chest. And I came off the thing, and automatically what they had trained us to do to stop ourselves just kicked in, right? And then I had to go back up. And then he's like, all right, now you need to go down Australian style. And I'm like, what's that? You got it on face first, right? And I was looking down, it's the same 40 feet, but now the second time, it's like, I've done this before, right? And so I went back down, and from then on, it was not an issue for me to go through that drill. But the principle in all of that is that it's difficult, it's scary, it's uncertain, but that's part of the deal. Because I signed up to be a warfighter. And the deal was, if I get dropped in a war zone somewhere, you think the enemy's gonna care about my feelings?
Nope. They're gonna prey on your weakness.
When we raise men and we send them out into the world, does the world care about their feelings?
Nope. And this is what I try to tell my clients when they come to me, and I'm trying to tell them, well, I'm not the father and I'm not your boss, but you did hire me and I am giving you advice. And when I'm pointing these things out to you and you are shutting it down, I'm telling you that if you're not preparing them and you're not giving them a responsibility and you're not holding them accountable and you're not teaching them these things, when you send them out into the world, how do you think that's going to work out for them?
Exactly. It's going to suck.
It's going to suck because you think their jobs are going to care. You think these other ladies or men are going to care. You think these companies, these corporations are going to care. No one's going to care.
Right. We live in a capitalist society. Everything's about competition.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I'm against like the participation trophies. You gotta learn how to lose sometimes.
Man, if someone give me a participation trophy, I would take this and give it to the winner. I lost. I'm gonna come back better next time, and I'm gonna win.
Right. That's right. You gotta learn how to lose sometimes.
So I want to ask you one more question, but I want to make one quick statement to anyone that's listening really quickly. Men, if you are listening to this or you are watching this, if you have a son out there in the world, be a man and raise your son and teach your son how to be a man. It is your duty, if you give birth to a son, that it is in your court to take the ball and teach your son how to be a man.
Yeah.
All right. So, if someone is trying to buy a home, we all know that, like, if you have a corporate job, like you said you worked for a while,
Right.
so obviously you could take 2 years worth of W-2s and you could go turn them into the bank, and they'll determine what your loan could be for based off of your, average income off of those 2 years.
Yeah.
For people that are watching or listening that have stepped away from the 9-to-5 world, the corporate world, and now they're entrepreneurs, small business owners, contract workers, hell, Uber drivers, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So your income is not quite as easy to look over as someone that just hands two forms over to the bank, right?
Right.
So what advice would you give them about the best strategy they can use to get their stuff in order to make sure that they can get a loan to buy a home, because the bank is going to want to see some proof of funds?
That's right. So I'm gonna say something that is counterintuitive to everything you've seen on every 30-second Instagram clip ever.
Okay.
Stop writing off everything. It's the first thing you gotta do. The reason being is because most banks are gonna say, you don't have 2 years of W-2s to send to us, so I need 2 years of 1099.
Mm-hmm.
So they can average over those 2 years what your income is. Here's the thing: if you make too many write-offs on your taxes, it basically reduces the amount of income you show.
Yep.
That's the whole purpose for doing the write-offs anyway, right? You're reducing your taxable income. So if you write off so much to where it looks like you only made $20,000 a year in taxable income, and you go to a bank and say, I want to get approved to buy a house, they're going to say, well, it looks like you make $25,000 a year, and we're going to approve you based off of that, right? So that's the first thing you got to do is you got to be smart with how you write stuff off and what you write off. The second thing you may want to consider is finding a hard money. Some people do hard money loans, especially for folks that want to do flips and rental properties and stuff. You can do a hard money loan. The person may finance you on the deal and also finance the renovations. They may take a cut out of whatever you make off the flip or whatever your rental income is, and it's going to be at a higher interest rate. However, as long as you don't get yourself upside down in a property or you don't hold it too long, it can be pretty beneficial for you. And then also the last thing I would say is find a lender who can, they have like what they call bank statement approvals, right? I'm not a mortgage lender, so I'm not super well versed in it, but I do have a person I work with that does that. And essentially what he does is he looks at, they approve you based off 12 months of what you have in your bank statements. So they can see that you make money. Honestly, that's what it boils down to. They can see you got invoices coming in every month at, let's say $10,000 a month. Then it's like, well, it looks like this person makes 120K, right? So as long as their debt isn't so high and their write-offs aren't too high, they can approve you based off your 12 months of bank statements. So there's a lot of ways. My philosophy is when somebody looks to get approved for a loan, you may get told no up front, but my philosophy is it's not no, it's just not right now. And I've had a ton of people who they come in and they're like, yeah, I want to get approved, send them to a lender. Lender says, oh, you got to do some work. And then they come back 3 to 6 months ready to go. And then they can go buy a house. Yeah. Right. So don't give up. It's back to our point, right? About
don't quit.
Don't quit.
Don't quit.
Go come up with a plan.
Yeah, and so you guys because I read and I do a lot of studying over the last 2 years, I'm sure you know this too, more people have walked away from their corporate jobs in the last 2 years than ever in our country, right, to do their own thing. So you guys are just getting started out. He just dropped some real knowledge on you. If you guys have opened your own business And I know it sucks because there's a lot of expenses when you open up your own business, whether you're buying a vehicle for, whether you're buying desks, whether you're buying computer stuff, what it doesn't matter what your field is, because whatever you start at, you're going to have to buy stuff. In the first year, you know, you can write a certain amount of stuff off and get away with it. Understand you're not going to be buying nothing in that first year because you are going to put a lot of money out there. But then going forward, years 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if your income's, like say you're making 100,000, but then you're writing 50 of it off in expenses, unless you have a company like a construction company and you have to write it off because you're going and buying sheetrock and nails and tape and hammers and material like that. If it's just a regular business where you don't have to write $50,000 off, be careful and don't write the $50,000 off, because like he said, yes, you made 100,000 income, but you wrote 50 of that off. So now the bank only sees you as you made 50. So now they're going to approve your loan based off of that.
That's right. So
be guys that are and girls that are just starting out and doing your own business, keep that in mind if you plan on purchasing something soon.
Yep.
Man, let's switch some stuff up, man. I think we tackled real estate pretty good. Let's jump into what you and your wife have going on with a couples retreat, because I said that was something that fascinated me and I was super interested in, man. Mm-hmm. So your wife and yourself put together these couple retreats that obviously you know you're a part of them.
Yeah.
What have you taken away from these? And if you had the chance to encourage others to go, what message would you send them?
So the number one thing that I've taken away from our couples retreats is it's not about fixing your partner, and it's not about your partner fixing you, right? So I think a lot of people, when they hear the term, you know, couples therapy or, you know, a couples retreat or whatever, they think that their goal is to come there, complain about all the things they hate about their spouse, and then you're going to give me the tools to fix them, right? And that's the first disclaimer I give people when I sit down with them at those retreats. Number one, I'm not a therapist, right? I'm a married guy who's, I think I have a pretty successful marriage that's imperfect and it needs a lot of work, and I'm here to collaborate and work with you guys, right? So you don't come there to try to fix them. Your goal is to work on you, right? Like your slogan, be the best you. Like, if I could have stolen that, I probably would have stolen that a long time ago. But I know you got trademarked.
So don't even try it out there.
But the thing is, really, that's the goal. You come there, how do you become a better you in the confines of your relationship, right? It's about going in there and doing self-work to figure out what your blind spots are, some things that you may need help in. And I found, honestly, that the people that have been most successful coming out of those retreats are those that are willing to do some deep work. Those that are willing to go there and be vulnerable, right? Those people that are willing to say, look, this is an area that I'm struggling in. I know all you guys may not have the answers, but chances are all you guys, some of y'all, may be dealing with the same thing. Yeah. Let's talk it out.
Or went through it and found some things that worked for you to help you get through it.
That's right.
It's crazy, man. It's so deep that you just said that. One of the things that I harp on with people all the time is people always talk about they want to be better versions of themselves, or they want to do better and make changes in their lives. I had a very deep conversation with someone yesterday that I consider them like a brother to me. Mm-hmm. And I said to them, man, it's easy for us to talk about change. I literally was doing basically a life coaching, even though I wasn't getting paid for it, but this man means a lot to me. He's a good friend of mine. So we was having a very deep conversation. He's going through some things. Yeah. And I was telling him, man, you can't just talk about change. I've been watching you go through this for a little bit now. You actually have to take the steps to change. That's right. Because you won't get better unless you make those steps to change. And we default in this watered down, pacified society that we live in now, where we don't want to take responsibility or blame for anything ourselves, and all we want to do is point the finger at everybody else. Mm-hmm. But to really get better and to really make progress, to be the best you have to look within self. Yeah. And how can you improve self? So the ultimate key in everything I just heard you say is that ultimately, what can you do to make yourself better? Right. And if you're making yourself better and your partner's making themselves better, then guess what's also going to be better?
Your relationship's going to be better.
You know, there's some key knowledge there.
Yeah, I mean, even when my wife and I, we did counseling before we got married, and our pastor, he sat us down and we were talking, and he's one of the best ways to have a successful marriage is if you have two people who are constantly working on themselves, right? But also pursuing the other person's happiness. Because he's like, you got to think about it. In a marriage, it's supposed to be happy. Y'all supposed to be partners. It's supposed to be a team, right? If both of you guys are attacking each other's interests and you're bumping heads because you want to do this and you don't care what that person thinks about it, then you're in a situation where there's tension,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of times in our society, everybody's like, oh, do you, right? Do you, not understanding or even taking consideration that there's another person involved in the situation, right? So if I'm just gonna do me in a marriage, then what's the purpose? Because if I don't take in consideration that there's somebody who I made a vow to say that for better or for worse, we're gonna make it, I'm gonna take care of you, whatever the case might be. If I don't take that other person in consideration, then I'm not being a good spouse, frankly.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a lot of that. I mean, we talk about a lot. We talk about a lot of subjects. We talk about sex. We talk about finances. We talk about just like my wife is really big into like soul wounds and stuff like that. Where we talk about how the way you're raised has a huge impact on who you are as an adult.
Absolutely.
Just the way you saw love. I can remember, my wife and I, we're foster parents, and there was a child that we were fostering when we first got started, and she and I mean, we're affectionate with each other, hug and kiss and touch and stuff like that, and he would be grossed out by it. You know what I'm saying? He was like 9, 10 years old. He was just grossed out by it, freak out. And the reason why he was freaked out by that was because he watched his dad almost beat his mother to death. He never came up in a house to where there was love and affection, especially in a physical sense. And so he didn't know how to react to it. And if, like a real close, one of my best friends grew up in a household where his mother did not show affection, didn't hug the kids, didn't kiss on the kids, didn't love on them in that way. And so now in his adult relationships, when he has a partner, there's always a conflict because he don't do PEA. He's not holding your hand. He's not doing the random kiss on the cheek, right? Yeah. And so it's, the women that he's dealt with, they have a problem with it, not understanding where he comes from. And so now he's in the process of kind of working through some of that to make himself better in that sense, right?
You have to. We had Dr. John Nance on a couple weeks ago. We haven't released that episode yet, but he's a childhood trauma expert.
Yeah.
And helping people overcome traumas and adversities they went through as a kid and how they affect you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's crazy, as I was listening to you talk, I thought about a lot of the things I went through, watching my mother get beat, watching my father walk out on us, getting passed through different homes, getting beaten, getting molested, and getting hurt as a kid, and not seeing the proper love and the proper relationships the way they should be, are things I went through, and with a lot more, and having to work through that. And then obviously, I educated myself later on and helped diagnose myself and get through a lot of that. But becoming friends with Dr. John Nance and, having really deep conversations with him, it really is a passion of mine, because I hate when I see other people that are hurt like that and they're struggling to overcome that. And I've tried my best as a man to help people overcome those things. And one of the things that I have used my platform for is, a lot of people look up to me as a man and look at me a certain way. Yeah. So as a man, if I'm telling you that I've been through these things and I overcame these things and you can too, so I'm letting other men know there's no shame in this. Mm-hmm. If these things happened to you as a kid, if you watched your mom get beat, or if you was molested, or you got passed through these different homes, or you had these childhood traumas happen to you, you're probably not going to be the best version of yourselves. But if you put in the work, and it's like going into a tunnel. So you drive through and then you go through the tunnel and then you come out and there's a light again. Yeah. If you put in the work, that's how it works. And that's how you'll come out the other end, beautiful light again.
Mm-hmm. You have to, man. It's it's interesting. A lot of people think that when you're in a marriage, it's like the love and all this stuff is like, you get married, you walk down the aisle, you go on your honeymoon, and then it's just happily ever after. And relationships are not like that.
No, that's not reality.
It's not reality because some point down the line, some of that trauma that you're talking about, it comes back up. You know, like one thing I realized about myself is I grew up in a household where my mom and her boyfriend at the time, they had an explosive relationship, you know, to where they argued a lot, loud, fussing and fighting and this and that. And somebody mentioned to me, they're like, you know, you're one of the calmest people that I've ever met, and I can't imagine you being upset. I'm like, no, I have an explosive temper, you know, it's not, I'm not healed of that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm working on that. I go to therapy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I live with a therapist who is, I'm definitely her worst case. But
I wonder if my wife. I wonder if I get on my wife's nerves with that stuff. She's probably like, "Shut up, Larry."
but I'm better than I used to be. But it takes like recognizing that. And the thing is, you bring all that stuff with you to whatever relationships, business relationships, friendships, intimate relationships. You bring all that stuff with you. You bring your whole self to that. And when the honeymoon phase is over, that's when that stuff pops up.
Yeah.
And so that's why people need to go. I'm a big advocate for going to some type of couples coaching, marriage counseling, whatever it is. Because the thing is, you don't have to be broken.
No.
Marriages don't have to be broken for you to work on them. You know, it's just like you guys bought this house,
Yeah.
right? This house, it has some flaws, but it was not a broken house. It wasn't busted up. And you guys came in, you put your own touch on it. You fixed it up. You did some things to it, and you made it a better version of what it was. And that took work. And it's the same thing with your marriage.
Steel sharpens steel, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier. The most successful people in the world have coaches.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different. Whether it's a therapist, a psychologist, a relationship coach, it's still a coach coaching you to be better.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think you're weak or you don't have a strong relationship because you want to see a coach or a therapist or any of that stuff, you're absolutely completely wrong.
Right.
That stuff, not only, it's not going to hurt. The only thing it can do is help.
It helps.
And there's nothing in this world we can't do better at. We can do better at cooking our dinner.
Mm-hmm.
We can be better at being kind to strangers.
Yeah.
We can be better at returning our parents' phone calls or text messages.
Yeah.
We can be better at every single thing in life. So if you married someone for life,
Mm-hmm.
why wouldn't you want to make that the best version that it could be? Right? So another question that I have for you is, are these retreats usually for people that are in rocky relationships that need help, or are they for solid couples to continue to build onto their strong relationships that they already have? I think we touched on that.
Yeah.
But can you dive a little bit deeper on why? Because like I said, there's a 70% mentality out there that thinks I don't need that. And then there's a 30% out there that does.
Yeah.
For that 70% that doesn't understand, can you help them understand a little bit better?
Yeah, you know, the thing is, I think part of what those 70% are dealing with is a little bit of pride and ego, right? Because the thing is, when you go into a situation to where you have to reveal your weaknesses, you have to reveal the places where you're not amazing at, that can be vulnerable for people, and that can cause them to turn off. So I think that's the reason why a lot of people are like, no, I would never do that, right? Because you're going to expose yourself, you know, to be quite honest with you. And so the reason why it's important is because those places that are weak to you, the first thing most of us do is we build up a defense mechanism to protect it, right? I mean, that's just human nature. And you think about being in a marriage, right? Let's say you're struggling with a porn addiction, right? Which a lot of us men are, because quite frankly, all you gotta do is turn on Instagram, and if you scroll for 2 seconds, you're gonna see a half-naked woman, right? You can't avoid it. So let's say you're struggling with a porn addiction, and you realize that that is a struggle for you, and you go to a couples retreat, and whoever's running the thing says, you know, let's talk about porn. Then at that moment, you're either going to tense up, and you're going to be like, oh crap, or you're going to shut down, right? Because you don't want to reveal that as a weakness. Now, I think that 70% is going to be like, no, I'm not talking about that. You know what I'm saying? I would never, why would I go and reveal that weakness that I have, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to think less of me. And the thing is, once again, it's not about everybody else in the room. It's about you. Get something for yourself. You know, so if you're struggling with something like that and you go to a couples retreat where that's going to be a topic, there could be something there good to help you get over that thing. You know what I'm saying? Or let's say it's, you're struggling with finances, right? I'm not a financial advisor. However, I know how to do a budget. Am I great at it? To be honest with you, no. However, there could be somebody else in that room that's excellent at that. And it would be really great to be around somebody like that who you can grow from,
Steel sharpens steel. When you put a bunch of solid couples together, yeah, this one might have a flaw here, this one might have a flaw there, but overall these are solid couples that all have the intention of getting better. That's the type of people you want to surround yourself, because that's how you get better as well. Right. If you surround yourself with people that are just okay being okay, well, that's what you're going to be. Okay.
That's right. And okay, it's not enough.
No, it's definitely not enough for me. I don't want to be okay at anything. Right. I get mad if I'm good at something. And they're like, "You're pretty good." I'm like, "Pretty good." I want to be great.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, tell everyone that's listening if they're interested in checking out these couple retreats or signing up for them or finding out more information. What's the website that they can look at and the email address?
Yeah, so the website is nsynccouples.com. And the way to email us is info@nsynccouples.com, to keep it pretty simple. Just the format of the retreats is we try to go to a different location every year. COVID, we knocked it down for a couple years, but now we just restarted back in 22. And this year we're still trying to figure out exactly where we're going to host the retreats. It's typically like a 3 to 4 day deal. You come in, we're going to do sessions with just the men, just the women. We'll come in and do group sessions. We contract a local therapist or couples counselor or whatever from that city, wherever we are, to come in and do like a workshop, like a half-day workshop, typically on like that Saturday. And then we also build in a date night as part of it to give the couples time to go off and reconnect. And just kind of talk through some of the things that may have been revealed as they go through the sessions and everything. It's pretty informal. It's a great, I think it's just a great resource. I'm glad my wife thought of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can find it at nsynccouples.com.
Stop looking outward and start looking inward.
That's right.
Okay, man. So I feel like I'm about to put a smile on your face.
Okay.
All right. So you are a new father for the first time.
Yes, sir.
How do you balance work versus home life? Wow. And what is your favorite part of being a dad?
Wow. You did put a smile on my face. The way I balance home and work, honestly, is sticking to a schedule. My wife, like I said, she's an entrepreneur as well. So we live by calendars. Like Google, we live by the Google calendar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She has a calendar. She's got a personal. I got a personal. We have a shared calendar. We got our business calendars. And we try to sync up as much as possible so that we can be able to manage our schedules so that we can create a routine for our child. So that's probably the most practical advice I could give. Because it's worked for me, honestly. Live by a calendar. And I'm not the most rigid person in the world, but I just need that, or else I'll be trying to set appointments and do this and that. And she'll be like, who's home with the kid? But yeah. Man, my favorite part about being a dad, wow. Just spending time with him, just hanging out with him and just watching him learn. So he's 12 months. And seeing how he figures stuff out and like he celebrates, it's like he applauds himself, you know what I'm saying, when he does something. Like recently we started the routine of like brushing your teeth. Yeah. And so at the end of the night we're kind of like, oh, you want to brush your teeth? And he's like, teeth? And we stand up, we stand him up on the thing and he's mimicking us brushing his teeth, and then he'll put the toothbrush back and close the little thing that we have over the toothbrushes, and he's like, yeah, he starts clapping. And I just love the fact that he's in this phase that he likes to learn things, so we try to stimulate that and lean into that. And then my other part is, I body slam him at least twice a day. You know what I'm saying? So, I love it, man, and he looks forward to it.
So, all right, so you are a father for the first time a little bit later in life.
Yeah.
right? So I know you fostered children before, but like your natural birth son, for someone that has had their first child a little bit later in life,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to others out there that are experiencing that for the first time a little bit later in life too? That maybe they have a kid on the way and they're a little bit older and they're worried, like, oh man, I'm 35, I'm 40, I'm 45. What am I gonna do?
Man, you know what? The best advice I can give you is something which probably gonna put a smile on your face. Stay physically active, right? Because I think about it all the time. Like I'm like, this kid he's trying to learn how to walk, and once he learns how to walk, he's gonna run. And I got a half acre. You know what I'm saying? Over a half acre. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to chase him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm excited about that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm able to do that. You know, so that's one thing is just, you know, be prepared for the physical aspect, but also understand that you're not behind. You know what I'm saying? Like people have children later in their 30s and 40s or whatever it is for different reasons. Some people try it medically, it's an issue. Some folks they get caught up in trying to build a career and this and that. It doesn't matter. Just the journey that you're on is your journey, right? And you have to embrace that. And you can't compare yourself to everybody else. You know, I think that's for many different reasons, that's a struggle in our society. But for me, honestly, it's like, man, this is the life that I've been given.
Yeah.
And I'm going to embrace it because that kid, when I come home, he doesn't see how many times I've got rejected today.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't see how many times I was down on myself. He doesn't see the worries that I have about my finances or about raising him. All he sees is his dad. And that's all you need to be, right? And that's what matters. And that's where, man, it don't matter what kind of day I had. When I come home and he's waving and he's happy to see me, I'm like, yeah, I'm about to body slam him.
So no matter what's going on today, you look forward to that moment when you have that peace with your son, and it brings you back, it keeps you centered and grounded. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
But you know, there's no doubt in my mind that you know you would be an absolutely amazing father. You're a great person.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's switch it up really quickly, man.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke about you being a former military man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for your service, because none of us would be here able to do any of the things that we're doing if it wasn't for our military that kept this country free and allowing us to do this stuff. Yeah. We wouldn't be talking on this podcast today. Right. We wouldn't be controlled, being told what to do.
That's right.
But instead, because people like you in our military have served our country and kept us free, we have the options to do things like this and speak our free mind. I think that's lost on a lot of people.
It is. And it's an honor to serve.
So, as a former military man and a black man in America, what is your opinion on the state of police in America?
So, first of all, I think the state of police for me it's an entity that I think is starting to be a little bit out of control, in the sense that some of our cops are they're all under a lot of stress, right? They don't get paid enough. It's a hard job. It's a boring job. I get it, right? It's one of the only things that you can do to where you can feel like the Maytag man 1 second, and then the next second you're in a life or death situation. I get that. But that's also what you signed up for, right? Just like for myself and every other soldier, Marine that's ever served, you sign up for the pressure. You go into it understanding that this is a hard thing, right? And I think a lot of our cops may not have that principle. And the other thing I think about the state of policing right now is that they need to be reformed. I don't believe in defunding the police. Honestly, I think that's one of the dumbest slogans ever. You know, we kind of talked about that.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, because I mean, I grew up in the inner city of Cleveland, and on my block, people were selling dope. There was prostitution. There was gang violence. There was shootouts all the time. And my parents and everybody else was calling the cops to try to get it cleaned up. And they supported politicians who said, we're going to clean up the streets, right? Because nobody wants to live in that environment. This is America. You know, we're supposed to be the freest, best place to live in the world. We're supposed to be the shining city on the hill. That's what we tell ourselves. And we can't be that if our streets are not safe. So yes, we need cops. However, our cops need to also understand that we as taxpayers, we pay your salary and you work for us. You're a public servant. You're there to protect and serve. You're not there to dominate us, right? So I think number one thing we do is we need to retrain some of these police forces. We need some type of independent investigators or something like that, because, you know, like I told you, I feel like the worst cops are the cops who watch bad cops do dumb stuff, right? That's detrimental to the community, and they don't say anything because either they're not courageous enough to say it, or they fear that retaliation that they can't, you know, report a bad cop.
Yeah.
So we need to fix those things. You know what I'm saying? Is the will there to do it? I don't know. I think one of the worst things about policing right now is it's become a political issue. Mm-hmm. And just like everything else in our society, we make it a matter of politics. And so you can't go out there as let's say a white person. Let's say you're a white person in rural America. You couldn't just go out there and say, man, these cops are screwed up and they need to be fixed. Because most of the people around you will probably say, well, that doesn't match our politics.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like where are you coming from with that? Mm-hmm. Are you a sympathizer in some way? Like, conversely, a black person, you go out there and you leave your neighborhood and become a cop. Some people are gonna be like, oh, you're working with the enemy now. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, maybe the person just wants to protect and serve his community. So we have to get to the point where we pull our politics out of it, understand that the police, they're there for a reason, and they need to serve that reason. They need to serve that purpose. Because if they don't, what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a war on the police. And the thing is, they got more guns than civilians have. They got more training than they have. But if we don't catch ourselves and we don't slow this thing down, we'll end up in a situation where I could totally see some places becoming a police state in America, like New York City, you know, LA becoming like a martial law state.
There has been some incidences dealing with the police, and not just the police, a lot of politics and a lot of other things. COVID, yeah. Politics, what happened at the White House,
yeah.
These beatings and shootings with these cops, the shot or the not shot, all the fighting amongst each other in America. There's been moments over the last few years where it's almost felt like we are a pot of water boiling, mm-hmm. and it's only a matter of time for some of that starts to boil over the top of the pot and hit the stove. Yeah. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know if that's going to be a couple states really going all in and having a fight with each other, inner cities, the cities versus the heartland. I'm not sure, but it is on the brink.
It is.
It is crazy how close on the brink it is. And we're in a country that's supposed to be free, but we put all these limitations on ourselves where everything has to be black or white, mm-hmm. or blue and red, Democrat and Republican.
That's right.
Right? So like nothing can be in the middle.
No.
It's so crazy. Nothing can be in the middle. So why as a human being can't I agree with some of the things on this side and some of the things on this side? Or my own beliefs.
Yeah.
It's if you say this, oh, well, then you're definitely that.
Right.
Or if you say this, oh, well, then you hate that side. What?
Yeah.
You can't put your ideas on me and make me feel this way or this way. I'm a human being with my own mind, my own brain, and my own thoughts, and I have the right and the ability to think some of these things might be okay, some of these things might be, some of these things aren't right. But we try to force everybody to take these sides, or we cancel them,
yep.
or we flip on them.
That's right.
And we've created this society now where it is bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
And I hope that things get resolved and it doesn't turn in, or what you're saying happens, or what I said happens, because that would be terrible to happen in America. Yeah. But I would not be shocked, because if you pick up your phone or you cut the TV on, it's happening in cities.
Yeah. There's cities where cops are literally like not going to certain neighborhoods, you know, because they're just kind of like, oh, you know, all those people were saying defund the police or whatever the case might be. And to me, that's petty, right? And I don't believe in petty men. I mean, I think that's stupid, right? That's not a you know, an attribute becoming of a man. But think about cops, we have to figure out how to. Okay, I'll give you a real life scenario. I had a conversation with my wife and I. We went to this forum that McFadden and I think the lady, she was like spokesperson for the cops or for CPMD or CMPD a couple years ago. And offline, we had a conversation with them. And we were talking about the rules of engagement. My wife is a combat vet. I'm a combat vet. And I recalled the story to them to where I was sitting on a guard tower in the middle of Bakuba, and our base was getting attacked constantly, just pop shots and small arms fire and stuff like that. But then we started having an issue with IEDs and car bombs. I'm sitting on a guard tower. I see a vehicle that fits the description of a vehicle that had put out some IEDs. And they're just going back and forth to our gate, digging around the road. And so I call it into the talk and I'm like, hey, I got eyes on, permission to engage. I'm sitting on a 50 caliber machine gun. I want to engage, right? This looks like a dangerous situation. And they said, no, you got to be able to verify. So I try to zoom in a little tighter, see, just verify what I'm seeing. I can't fully verify, but it looks like a duck and it's quacking like a duck. And I'm like, permission to engage. They're like, no. So I'm like, can we send out just what we call a QRF, right? Which is quick reactionary force, to go check it out. And they're like, no, we can't do that, right? Because the threat didn't rise to the level to where I could engage. So a couple days later, some other troops from the country of Georgia, they went out down the same road, IED blew up, killed one of their soldiers, right? The standard was so high in a foreign country for me to engage with what turned out to be an enemy combatant that I could not engage in that situation. In America, we have a rules of engagement for police officers where they can just pull up, split second, start shooting, and then turn around and say, oh, I fear for my life. And then when we see the body cam footage, it's something, it shows a completely different story. And that's the problem with our policing, in my opinion, is that these people are not held to a high standard. How am I as a soldier in a foreign land where I know everybody, just about everybody that don't look like me, could potentially kill me for real? And I have a higher standard to engage in that threat than an officer in a local city in America. It doesn't make sense. And you know what? No knock on them, but McFadden and that other lady, they had no answers for that. There's no answer for that.
I feel like we talked about there being a mental health crisis in America.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take these people and you allow them to become cops and give them a gun, a badge, and ultimate authority, I feel like there should be some psychological tests and exams done on them before they're given that.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're sending people out there that you haven't evaluated properly and they're not mentally stable,
Mm-hmm.
and you're putting these people in these type of situations, they're not prepared for them.
Right.
You shouldn't have to have, a master's degree to be a cop, but how about you at least have, I don't know, an associate's degree in criminal justice, a little bit of education on the situation. So I don't believe in defunding the police because I feel like that's stupid. I grew up in an area just like you grew up in, and one thing that I know that you know is that if you took away the cops, me and you could probably make it. We could probably walk out of our house and make it to our car.
Yeah.
Just grab a gun and walk to our car, and if someone messes with us, it's the rules of engagement.
Yeah.
But how are these ladies and how are these other men that aren't built like that? How the hell are you going to make it to your car?
Right.
Because neighborhoods you think you live in now that are safe are not going to be safe. Because where do you think people that have bad intentions are going to come to? They're going to come to areas where they think people have stuff, where they can take stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got rid of the cops, how the hell are you going to live? How are you going to function?
Yeah.
Now there needs to be a reform on the cops.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be an oversight committee that is separate from the cops.
Yeah.
So if there's complaints or there's anything like that, it's separate. So they can kind of be like a governing body over the cops, almost like USADA is over the fighters.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with UFC. They have nothing to do with boxing. Right? They're not part of the boxers. They're not part of the UFC. They're a separate entity that tests these people. And if they get caught breaking one of the rules, they fail a test for something, they're suspended.
Yeah.
We don't have to be part of the UFC or part of boxing. You failed our test, you're suspended.
Right.
There should be an oversight committee that's like that oversees the cops. If you're not doing this, if you don't pass the psychological test, if the reports don't match up, if there's complaints on you, you're pulled. That's a wrap.
Right.
So I feel like that would be a more intelligent and smart fix to the problem.
I think so too. And I think we have to do away with qualified immunity. which is just basically like if you're a public servant and you do something wrong, it's like the standard has to be so high for you to be proven that you've broken the law, right? And if you have broken the law, you can't get sued. You see what I'm saying? There's no civil liability.
Yeah.
You know, which you see a lot of times. I mean, like the George Floyd situation, like that guy, he ended up having 2 trials, but he didn't have a civil case.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Which, if you're convicted in criminal court, you know, twice, you know, wouldn't it stand to reason that you would be convicted civilly too? Right?
Exactly.
So some things like that need to change. You know.
I agree, and I think an oversight committee could kind of do that.
Mm-hmm.
What legacy would you like to pass on to your son?
Oh wow, that's a good one. I would say I would want the legacy that I pass on to him would be a legacy of just like having a household full of love, number one, and just being a good example of a man to him. Like that's the thing that I want to leave with him. You know, I'm gonna love to leave some properties and stuff like that to him as well, but a lifetime of memories, right? I don't want him to look at my headstone. Like we talk, and you know, we talk about this a lot. Like there's 2 numbers on the headstone. In the middle, there's a dash. The dash is your life, and I don't want him to look at my headstone, see that dash, and not be able to associate any memories with it. You know, so the things that I was taught by my parents and my elders that I want to pass down to him, that's in that dash, and I want that to mean something to him. So that's what I'd like to pass on.
This was a very wide-ranging interview, very deep, very thoughtful. It's exactly what I thought it would be when I asked you to come on to do this podcast. You're a very good person, a very deep person, a very real and genuine person. I appreciate that about you, and I respect that about you. Thank you for coming on. Before we wrap it up, can you please give everybody your personal website for your realty and your email address, and any way that people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Ken Sold It. The couples retreat is called insynccouples.com. You can find us there, and the website for the real estate team is naxgroup.com. That's KNAXgroup.com. You can search us on Google. You know, all the places. We're out there in Charlotte, and you know, just come check us out. You know, we're there to serve the community. You know what I mean? And yeah, just anywhere. And I just want to appreciate you, Larry, because knowing your backstory, knowing where you came from, you didn't let that be something that held you down. You know, in fact, you probably have used a lot of that and what you've learned from those situations. You've used that to be a better man and be an asset to the community. So I definitely want to appreciate you for that, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, for real. I wouldn't be who I am today without all the experiences that I went through, the good, the bad, and ugly. If you take one piece out of the way, it would change everything, and I wouldn't be the man I am today. So I'm thankful for the good, the bad, and ugly. I'm thankful for this opportunity. I'm thankful for being able to be here. I'm thankful for being able to have this voice and this platform to help people and to shine light on great people like you as well. Man, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. We tried to give you a lot of knowledge on several different topics today. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Be the Best You podcast. Please make sure you take the time to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Until next time, try until you fly.